All right, joining us to discuss the upcoming talks between the United States and Ukraine is Peter Zalmayev, Director of Eurasia Democracy Initiative. Good evening, Peter. Thank you very much for joining us on the program.
Pleasure.
No, it's a pleasure to have you with us. So before we get to the peace agreement framework itself, let's talk just about the location. The location is Saudi Arabia, and many have been saying that Saudi Arabia has been positioning itself as the ideal location for such peace talks. What do you make of it?
I mean, traditionally, Saudi Arabia has been close to Republican administrations in the White House. It's actually always been the case. And lately, Mohammed bin Salman, the hereditary prince, has been getting quite close to the Russian leadership as well. So Saudi Arabia is in a unique position of being close to both governments, and it has actually played a pretty neutral role in this war. For the first time under bin Salman's watch, Foreign Minister of Saudi Arabia visited Ukraine. That happened about 2 years ago.
Because we already know that President Volodymyr Zelensky is already there and meeting with bin Salman a bit later on today, or was already met, in fact. Then to the peace agreement itself. Of course, this meeting is coming on the back of that very disastrous screaming match. But when we look at the dynamics now, what happened at that specific meeting was that the minerals deal was not signed. So many would say a lot is at stake if there was, as we had heard from the United States, that they were intending on signing that minerals deal because they wanted to actually get back the money that had already been spent, or some of the aid towards Ukraine's fight against Russia. So given what had happened then, that there was no deal that was signed pertaining to the minerals, would you say that this time around there would be more circumspect, both parties would be more circumspect in how they engage each other?
I think they will, but at the same time, I think Donald Trump does understand that this whole minerals deal and rare earths deal was not going to materialize any time in the near future. It's uncertain how much of that Ukraine has and what portion of it is in territories currently occupied by Russia. It was more of a kind of a gesture that Donald Trump wanted to, make and to show his electorate. Look, we're getting, putting America's interests first. It's a transactional presidency. We're going to get, recompensed and repaid for everything we've ever spent. He's continuously citing this grossly inflated figure of 350 billion, which never happened. U.S.
They're saying it's roughly 190.
Half or even less than half. And Europe did or has given Ukraine more. So Donald Trump's whole position has been, you kowtow to me, you listen, and you don't even, whatever figures I cite, whatever lies or semi-truths or whatever I say is the law, is the truth. After that happened, what you call a screaming match, I have a different word for it, but it's not for TV. Zelensky crawled back, and to try to get into Donald Trump's good graces.
But before we go even there, I want to talk about you holding the view that, if anything, it was more symbolic. That when President Donald Trump was saying they want this minerals deal signed, you were saying there was nothing to it. He just wanted to almost continue with the facade that he's a transactional president.
By all means.
But then, interestingly enough, Ukraine was also bargaining with it. Because if you look at Zelensky, he was somebody that many had said, reports had indicated that when he goes into these negotiations or these talks, he's going to actually be a person that states that for us, we would need further protection for us to sign this deal. But if you're saying there was nothing there, Ukraine couldn't even allocate or indicate whether some of it is on territory that's now currently with Russia. What does that mean? Because they were going in there to bargain with this.
Yes, they were. And, the way it was worded was also not very acceptable to the Ukrainians. Zelensky did not have this kind of personal power to be signing away the Ukraine's wealth like that, even though we know it will take years, more than a decade, to find out what's there, how much of it is there.
You're saying he doesn't have the mandate?
No, it has to be signed off by the parliament, So this is kind of a Trojan horse that Zelensky was very aware of. On the other hand, yes, security guarantees, that was another very important component. Donald Trump has ruled out NATO membership for Ukraine. He has ruled out additional assistance. He's cut off assistance
as it stands right now.
Military assistance to Ukraine. So the question is then, what are the guarantees that Russia will not reinvade again? there are no guarantees. Trump continues his line that, I believe Putin, I have it worked out with him. So on the one hand, you have Ukraine committing publicly to this, that, and the other, and then being made to apologize. On the other hand, Russia, we are not aware of what concessions, if any, it has been making. It's a complete black box. Donald Trump has not said anything what, if anything, has been promised to him by Putin. So that's why this whole process is shaping up in a very unfair format for Ukraine. And so also, just to add to this Saudi format, a meeting of Saudi Arabia, yes, good enough that Zelensky is meeting with the Prince bin Salman. But on the other hand, Ukraine is not a full participant in these talks. It looks like Ukraine is going to be an observer. Right now,
why would you
Russia.
say that? Because, I mean, you've got the United States that engaged Russia.
Yeah.
There was an attempt to engage the Ukraine. Obviously, we all saw how that went, but now again, there's a second attempt to engage them, perhaps to see what they're willing to offer or if there are any concessions.
But we don't even know if Ukraine is going to have at this round of talks a seat at the table. We don't know what Ukraine's role is going to be. It's still kind of murky. We don't have any confirmation. Putin has insisted that it has to be one-on-one U.S. versus Russia. He wants this Yalta II kind of agreement with great powers get together and decide the fate of smaller powers. That is the world according to Putin, and we see how Donald Trump has been willing to go along with this big power vision that totally ignores the needs, the dignity, the rights of smaller players like Ukraine.
So you're saying at this point, it's up in the air as to whether the U.S. delegation will actually meet with the Ukrainian delegation?
They will, but whether Ukrainian delegation will meet with the Russian delegation, that is a big question. Vladimir Putin has kind of ruled out meeting with Zelensky one-on-one, and Zelensky has ruled out meeting with Putin or negotiating with Putin. It's now part of Ukraine's law. So, I mean, we're in this kind of strange, legally speaking, gray area where neither side is willing to meet with the other because both sides consider each other illegitimate. That's what Putin has been saying, and that's another thing that we are very wary of the U.S. playing a neutral role in this, at the very least, because Trump has been essentially parroting Kremlin's line about how Zelensky is illegitimate. He's a dictator, you heard that, right?
Yes, but
he has to have new elections, and that's completely against the Ukraine's constitution, and it's a recipe for chaos. That's why this kind of Kremlin's line, where I'm afraid, is being fed through different channels to Donald Trump.
But then you're also speaking about the mandate. You've touched on that you don't believe that Volodymyr Zelensky actually had a mandate to even offer the minerals or to actually sign that deal. To a certain extent, then, I suppose you're also in agreement with Donald Trump that, at least in that respect, he didn't have the mandate to actually be somebody that's offering the minerals or such a deal.
Yes, but at the same time, it undercuts Trump's line that Zelensky is a dictator. If he were a dictator, he'd be able to sign it, but he's not. He is answerable to the parliament, to the people. It's a process. It's not like Vladimir Putin, who can just have his parliament rubber stamp it. Ukraine's parliament is not a rubber stamp institution.
All right. Thank you very much for joining us, of course. Sure.